You are listening to the Comics Corner #1, comic book reviews for April 4th, 2012. And right about there is where I should have some music, but I still don't have any music. I am working on it, though. I would like to get some sort of intro theme music, something going on, preferably something I don't have to pay to use. So if anyone out there is musically inclined, I am more than willing to accept submissions if anyone would like to provide the Comics Corner with a little bit of theme music, since we appear to be going full-time audio-video with the Comics Corner. And since this is the Comics Corner, and we've got a huge stack of comics to get through, let's start at the beginning and go right to the top of the stack. The top of the stack this week is just as surprising to me as it probably will be to you. We're going with Avengers vs. X-Men #1. I know what you're thinking. I've got to be crazy to pick this, but I actually found it to be an awful lot of fun. Marvel really needed this to be a good event, and it's off to a really good start. Let's face it, Fear itself was abysmal, to use a polite term. They've retconned almost everything that happened in it. DC is taking back the market share with the New 52, and Marvel needs something good to happen. Most of their titles are pretty lackluster. I'm a huge Marvel guy myself, and I am only currently reading 5 Marvel titles on a regular basis, and most of them came out this week. We'll get to those later, obviously. As far as a first issue of an event goes, I think this did exactly what you want. You've got your sides. Obviously, it's Avengers and X-Men. Marvel is trying to recreate Civil War. This time it's a lot more fun, though. There's no ideology attached to which side you would choose. This is just, do you like the Avengers more, or do you like the X-Men more? And right away, we know why they're fighting. We know what they're fighting for. The Phoenix Force is coming back to Earth, and basically Cyclops views it as a second chance for mutant kind, and Captain America thinks that it's too dangerous to be allowed to do whatever it wants to do. So he is going to intervene, preferably with the X-Men's help, and Cyclops, being the not always nice person that he is, basically unloads a full optic blast on Captain America, and that is kind of the opening shot of this war. And the first issue ends with the two sides squaring off. This is kind of a lot of fun, but also could be very big Marvel Universe altering with the Phoenix Force. You never know what's going to go on. Pretty much every character in the Marvel Universe is going to be involved in this. And I think the big thing to watch, or the character to watch, I should say, is probably going to be Wolverine. They are trying to recreate Civil War. It's pretty blatant, it's pretty obvious, but I don't hear anybody complaining either, because Civil War is a blast. SpiderMan was the big defector in Civil War. He started off siding with Tony and the pro-registration side, and then defected to Cap. And I think Wolverine is going to be our big defector this time around. He's currently siding with the Avengers. I don't think it's so much that he's against the X-Men or that he's with the Avengers as he's against Cyclops. After the events in Schism, I think there's still a lot of bad blood there, and he's more choosing with his emotions than with his intellect, so to speak. But I think that will change, either due to a mutant, maybe someone on the X-Men side dying, maybe Jean comes back along with the Phoenix Force. A lot of balls up in the air here. A lot of things could happen, but I think it's safe to assume that Wolverine is starting on the Avengers side, but he will not end this on the Avengers side. It's 12 issues long, which gives me a little bit of pause. But Fear itself was supposed to be 7, and then had 3.1, .2, .3 issues, and then a whole other wrap-up, blah, 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 blah. 12 issues. If they're all this good, we'll be fine with that. I hate the $3.99 price tag, but that's Marvel Comics these days. We got to roll with it. John Romita's art is fantastic, which is played no small part in me making this my top of the stack. I love Romita Jr.'s artwork. It was exciting and vibrant, just what this opening salvo in Marvel's big event needed. So Marvel's big event is off to a fantastic start. 11 more issues to go, though. We'll see if it stays that way. Speaking of the Avengers, we move on to our second comic of the week. It's The Amazing Spider-Man, number 683. The Sinister Six, led by Doc Ock, as always, have basically held the world hostage. Doc Ock says he can either cure global warming or make it 50 times worse. And the world and the Avengers are set to go with him. If he can cure global warming and make the planet environmentally stable, they're willing to let him do it. Spider-Man shows up to talk some sense into the Avengers. The Avengers realize that Spider-Man is right and go to what is basically the UN and plead their case. And then Doc Ock shows that he really can make this work, so the world is now against Spider-Man and the Avengers. The Avengers are very busy since they're fighting the X-Men and also currently helping Spider-Man and the Sinister Six. Then we get a giant battle with the Avengers and the Sinister Six, with Doc Ock's intellect overcoming the strength of the Avengers. And at the end of the issue, the Sinister Six are triumphant, and it's a nice little cliffhanger. Don't believe for a second, obviously, I don't think anyone does, that the Avengers are down for the count. But it makes for a really exciting issue, and an opening. Again, this is the very beginning of a self-contained Spider-Man event, the last one being Spider Island. This one is Ends of the Earth. Self-contained Spidey events that Dan Slott has put together have been a blast, and this one seems like it's going to be too. Spider-Man's in a very good place, despite my earlier criticisms on the Marvel Universe in general. Spider-Man comics have been a lot of fun, and with Ends of the Earth, it looks like that trend will be continuing. All right, from Amazing Spider-Man, we move on to Ultimate Spider-Man, or to be correct, Ultimate Comics All New Spider-Man, issue number 9. Obviously, this is the Ultimate Universe, very different take on Spider-Man. Peter Parker died, quite a while ago, I guess now, and Miles Morales, the new Spider-Man, is still learning the ropes, having a little bit of trouble. And my favorite thing about this series currently is the dichotomy that writer Brian Michael Bendis uses in the relationship between Spider-Man and his uncle. Obviously, Spider-Man's history and influences with Peter Parker, should say, his influences with his Uncle Ben and what Uncle Ben meant to him being the Spider-Man are well documented. Here we have Miles Morales. His uncle is a thief, like a super criminal, basically. He's actually the Prowler, if you're familiar with that character in the traditional Marvel Universe. Miles cannot trust his uncle, but now his uncle has stepped in over his head and is asking for his nephew's help. Basically issues the ultimatum: I know your secret, but if you help me out of this, we're square, and I won't tell, and you won't tell. So Miles is left with a moral dilemma on top of the fact that he's still getting used to his powers. It's incredible how Brian Michael Bendis has reinvigorated this series with an all-new Spider-Man. It started off as a publicity stunt, and anybody who's stuck around past the publicity stunt that Marvel created from it realizes what an amazing comic this truly is, and it balances those same learning the webs, and instead of learning the ropes, he's still learning the webs, and he's constantly faced with the moral dilemmas, much like Peter Parker. So it's a great homage to the Peter Parker character, and very familiar Spider-Man territory without ever borderlining on just sheer repetition and laziness. All right, moving away from the mainstream superheroes, we are on to Sweet Tooth, number 32. It's kind of amazing that it's actually already the 32nd issue of Sweet Tooth. I talked about last week how Jonathan Hickman's run on the Fantastic Four started when I started doing the Comics Corner, and Sweet Tooth by writer and artist Jeff Lemire started. I believe the second issue was my second column of the Comics Corner. It has been an amazing, amazing ride for Gus, Jeppard, and company. This was the very exciting conclusion to the current story arc, with Gus actually stepping up to play the role of the hero. Jeppard is MIA. Gus comes through and saves the day, saving everyone inside the dam. That won't make any sense unless you've been reading Sweet Tooth. And if you haven't been reading Sweet Tooth, with this arc just wrapping up, leaving all of our characters and most of our characters, I should say, in a pretty stable environment. If you have been missing out on Sweet Tooth, the next issue, which will be 33, again, it's hard for me to believe that we're already almost 33 issues now into Sweet Tooth. Issue 33 is where you're going to want to jump on with this series. It's a very nice pause in the story, chance to catch your breath, and Jeff Lemire, since this series has started, has not given readers very many chances to catch their breath. Fantastic conclusion to one of the best chapters in the story so far. Looking forward to see where Gus, Jeppard, and company head next. All right, from the somber Sweet Tooth, we head to two of the most wildly creative and highly entertaining and hilarious comics on the shelves today, or any day, quite frankly. You'd be hard-pressed to find a comic more enjoyable than these two, and the fact that they both came out on the same week and I get to talk about them back-to-back is outstanding. We are going to start off with the return of Skull Kickers, number 13. Yes, after much too long a wait, Skull Kickers is back on shelves with our two still nameless heroes hitting the high seas, taking off in a more pirate-centric adventure. These guys, one is very, very large and bald and wields a gun in a universe that does not recognize guns. It's a weapon of mystery to anyone the two come across. Even his companion, the short, loud, hairy dwarf that he companions with, does not understand the gun entirely. It's one of the many bizarre mysteries that this series holds. The two characters don't even have names, as I mentioned, and they currently find themselves on a stowaway. Stowaway? Is that how you say that? They're stowaways, anyway, on a pirate ship crewed entirely by females, which the dwarf finds amusing. The women are not nearly as impressed with him as he is with all of them, which provides even more hilarity and excitement. And this series never fails to make me laugh repeatedly while reading it. But throughout the whole thing, there's a very solid story in place. It keeps you entertained regardless of the comedic elements. And it's not a series to be missed. It's a brand new story arc called The Six Shooter on the Seven Seas. So that makes me think now maybe we actually will get some resolution on this whole gun thing. It's pirates with the two characters that for 12 issues I've really come to like. So good things ahead for Skull Kickers for sure. And from the twisted and hilarious Skull Kickers, we go to the hilarious and twisted Chew number 27. This is the end of the current story arc, Major League Chew, which had our main character Tony Chew, Chibopath. I believe that's how you pronounce it. One of the things I'm struggling with now that I'm doing a audio podcast instead of writing it is I actually have to know how to pronounce all these names and characters and abilities. Basically, Tony is a special kind of psychic who absorbs psychic memories by eating things. He tastes blood at a crime scene, and he has images of what went down and how the crime scene ended up the way it did, things like that. He is captured and interrogated by a guy who wants to write a tell-all book on the sex life of Major League Baseball players. This is the end of that particular story arc. If this sounds weird and confusing, it's because the comic book is weird and confusing. Highly entertaining, but weird and confusing. I always had trouble explaining it when I would write the reviews, and I'm finding that it's just as difficult to explain when I'm talking about the reviews. They do all these great little things where they jump back or forth in issues. Actually, this is issue number 25. Issue number 27 was actually released, I want to say about 6 months ago, in continuity. So we're an issue away from that story fitting right in with everything else. And when that issue was released between, I think it was like issues 17 and 18, it did make a lick of sense, obviously. But now that we've seen the progression, we understand why Tony, our main character, was in that position and where all these other characters, how they got to where they're at. And there's actually one panel in here where they jump ahead to issue number 60. And it just fits the quirkiness of the story. It's very adult. It's very gross at times. It's very cartoonish art. But that doesn't mean it doesn't make you want to throw up sometimes when certain characters are wearing way less than they should be, like how this one starts off. I'm not going to say any more than that. If you want to find out, you should be reading Chew, because quite frankly, if you're not reading Chew, I feel sorry for you. One of the most original comics on the stand, as I've said probably 3 times by now, and you're really doing yourself a disservice by not reading it. Again, a new story arc starts next, so be sure to check it out. And we're going to wrap up by taking a trip back into mainstream superhero comics. We are headed into the new DC 52, which started their new month of issue number 8. And up first on today's Comics Corner is Action Comics. Action Comics, if it were not for Batman, would be my favorite of the new 52. What Grant Morrison has done with a young Kal-El or Superman or Clark Kent or whatever you want to call him is nothing short of amazing. Obviously, Morrison's ideas, so to speak, don't always work. He's a little out there sometimes, but with this story and with Brainiac as the villain and already playing on so many familiar elements like Superman, this is where Superman gets his suit, Bottle City effect, so to speak. He's miniaturized Metropolis, and it's up to Superman to save Metropolis from Brainiac. You have Luthor, who I'm hard-pressed to think of a time that Luthor has been better used than he's been in this series. He's kind of playing both sides against the middle. He thought he was saving the planet Earth, and really he was giving it to Brainiac on a silver platter. He is helping Clark Kent, even though he doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman. He's helping Brainiac. He's helping himself. Most of all, I think that's probably the most important thing to remember. Just seeing a young Superman learning the ropes, discovering his costume, discovering his abilities. He still can't even fly in this series. And it's just, it's fantastic, fantastic stuff. It's actually the first time I've ever been fully committed to a Superman comic. Superman is obviously the quintessential superhero, but doesn't always. It's hard to write a good Superman story, and Grant Morrison has done it, and it's commendable. And Action Comics is just purely exciting. All right, and from Action Comics, we move on to Justice League International. I was super excited to see that Justice League International was going to be part of the new 52 lineup. Just doing a little recap for those of you who never read the column. Justice League Generation Lost, coming out of Blackest Night, was a terrific series. Really made me miss the old JLI comic. And this new JLI comic has not been just like the old one, as much as I might like it to be, and it's not quite like Justice League Generation Lost was, but it does scratch that itch in a very similar and satisfying sort of fashion. This issue, number 8, is guest stars galore. We've got Batwing temporarily joining the crew at Batman's request, and at the end of the issue, OMAC shows up and proceeds to lay waste to the entire JLI. It's not clear in this issue why OMAC has popped up, but I know that part of DC's directive in the New 52, the second half, I should say, of the first year of the New 52, is to drive home the fact that this is a shared universe and all these characters coexist together. So maybe his reasoning for showing up was explained in OMAC or in another series. I know OMAC's been popping up here and there. The news of his cancellation really rattled a few people, and I think just because his series is ending doesn't mean we've seen the last of the character. He's popped up in Frankenstein Agent of Shade, which I think would be a good fit for him. And at least for the time being, the Justice League International is going to have to deal with the big blue guy too. It's a very good issue in that it kind of showcases the best of the JLI across a pretty broad spectrum. You've got a lot of talking moments with characters just standing around interacting, which is good, and the character interactions is an important part of the JLI. But then you've also got Booster Gold, Batwing, and Batman throwing down with some bad guys even before OMAC shows up. So it's kind of a best of both worlds issue. You've got the character interactions, you've got the big action, and Justice League International is far from the best of the New 52, but it is one that I do look forward to reading every month. All right, and finally we are wrapping up this week's episode of the Comics Corner with Venom, number 15, coming out of the big Venom event crossover with Red Hulk, X-23, and Ghost Rider. Venom is back on track, starring in his own series, and joining the Secret Avengers, oddly enough. As if the Avengers don't already have enough going on. Now they have to deal with Flash Thompson and his addiction, so to speak, to the symbiote. A lot going on in this issue. I love the interaction between Venom, or I should say Flash Thompson, and Captain America. Captain America recognizes Flash as a military man and wants to respect him, but doesn't believe a word Flash tells him about not being addicted to the symbiote, not needing it, not wanting it. Cap has put his trust in his scientists, so to speak, in Hank McCoy and Henry Pym, sorry, I got a little confused there, who have convinced him that they have found a way to suppress the symbiote's attraction, or so to speak, to its host. So they believe that Flash can use the symbiote without bonding to it permanently. We've yet to see if that's going to blow up, and I also like the fact that now Cap is keeping the secret from Spider-Man. Spider-Man still doesn't know that Flash Thompson, his former nemesis, bully, whatever you want to call him, turned new best friend apparently, is in fact one of his most deadly enemies in Venom as well. Still waiting for that keg to blow, and it's going to be awesome when it does. Remender is way too good a writer to let it happen too soon. I think he's going to drag us along for quite a while before he reveals that and lets that situation escalate and blow up. And it's been a great build for these 15 issues. Venom and Flash, I should say, are in very different places than this series started, and this series just continues to impress. The 10-year-old me that was obsessed with Venom in the early 90s would be thrilled to know that almost 30-year-old me is reading a Venom series right now. And we got a Scarlet Spider series out there too. So that's definitely speaking to my early 90s inner child nostalgia. Venom is better than expected, let's put it that way. And this is your jumping on point, since I've seemed to be making a habit of telling people when it is and isn't a good time to jump on, and this would be a very, very good time to jump on with Venom. We've also got Eddie Brock in the mix. Those of you familiar with Spider-Man and Venom in the history know that Eddie Brock was the original, or should I say the second host of the Venom symbiote, with Peter, of course, being the first. He is in the mix here, but I won't spoil the role he plays. But things are going to get very, very interesting very, very soon. But again, Remender is dragging a lot of different plot threads through this story, and things are just picking up again after the big crossover event. So if you're looking to get into Venom, if what I'm telling you sounds good, this is where you start. All right, comic book fans, there you have it. My first full-on episode of the Comics Corner. Once again, I will put the call out. The Comics Corner needs some music, a little introduction, a little outro. Would be nice. So if anybody out there is musically inclined or has music they can let me use with permission, that would be fantastic. In the meantime, make sure you're hitting up www.popculturenetwork.com on a daily basis for a ton of incredible content from everyone you know and love over there. Dirt is producing material left and right like a madman. You've got myself now doing the podcast. Sweenholic, the incredible Sweenholic, and I just released the second episode of the Radical Corner of Turtle Comics Talk, where we talk about the new Turtle series from IDW. Sween, busy as ever doing tour reviews left and right, is also one of the co-hosts of What the Shell on PopCultureNetwork.com. Sweenholic, Chris Vint, Mike Lacey, and Dylan Cook bringing you some awesome Turtle goodness, because there's all sorts of Turtle stuff going on right now. Those guys have a brand new podcast to celebrate all of it. And of course, lest we forget, the infamous Rob Bass doing Not Mitten Box, the Caption Box, and all the great comics content that he provides to the Pop Culture Network. In case you guys haven't gotten the hit yet, there's all sorts of stuff going on with the Pop Culture Network, so you need to stop by every day to see what's new. And be sure to hit up the forums at the Pop Culture Network as well. And of course, if any of these comics sounded awesome to you, there's one place and one place only you should be getting them from, and that is www.shoppcn.com. Killen gets the new comics in every week. It's basically an online comic book store. And he doesn't just have comics. He's got toys, he's got DVDs, he's got anything and everything that brings you to Pop Culture Network in the first place there for sale. So be sure and hit up www.shoppcn.com. And I will see you all next week. Keep reading those comics, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.